Welcome to Power Plays Network, where history's greatest power moves come to life. If you want to master strategy, influence, and success, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Let's dive in. History remembers conquerors, emperors with iron fists, warlords who paint the map in blood. But some of the most fascinating figures in history, they didn't command armies. They commanded something far more potent: influence. Cleopatra VII of Egypt. Her name echoes through the centuries, a name synonymous with seduction, with opulence, with tragedy. But what do we really know about this woman? What forces shaped her? What drove her relentless ambition in a world dominated by men? She ruled no empire, commanded no legions. And yet, two of Rome's most powerful men, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, risked everything for her. Empires trembled, legions marched, and at the heart of it all, whispering in the ears of emperors, was Cleopatra. This isn't a love story. This is a power struggle of the highest order. A war for influence waged with charm instead of steel. This is the story of the ultimate power play. This is the story of Cleopatra. The throne behind the throne. To understand Cleopatra, you have to understand the world she was born into. It wasn't the romanticized Egypt of Hollywood. This was the 1st century BC. The last embers of the once mighty pharaohs were fading. Alexander the Great's successors, the Ptolemies, now sat on a decaying throne. And what a throne it was. Egypt, the breadbasket of the Mediterranean, a land of unimaginable wealth and ancient power, now a prize fought over by Greeks and Romans, its fate hanging by a thread. Imagine the pressure cooker of that world, the constant maneuvering for advantage, the shifting alliances. Betrayal was a heartbeat away. Cleopatra was born into this viper's nest. Royal blood, yes, but a bloodline riddled with intrigue and violence. Her own father, Ptolemy XII, had bought his way onto the throne with Roman gold. Stability, security, those were luxuries for lesser mortals. This was a world where power was a zero-sum game. One player's gain was another's loss. And young Cleopatra, she learned that lesson early and well. She had to. Survival depended on it. By her late teens, Cleopatra had witnessed more treachery and bloodshed than most see in a lifetime. Her father, driven from power by his own people, her own siblings vying for the throne. And then, it was her turn. Exiled, betrayed, cast out by her own brother, Ptolemy XIII. But Cleopatra was not one to be discarded so easily. She was a Ptolemy, yes, but she was also a descendant of the pharaohs. The blood of gods flowed through her veins, or so the legends claimed. And legends, as we'll see, have power of their own. While her brother and his advisors squabbled amongst themselves, Cleopatra was plotting her return. She understood that raw power wasn't enough. To truly rule, she needed something more. She needed leverage. And fate, as it so often does, intervened. A Roman general, a man destined to become a legend himself, arrived in Alexandria. His name was Julius Caesar, and Cleopatra. She was about to play the most audacious gamble of her life. Chapter 3. Power play number 1. Control desire, control the decision. Caesar arrived in Egypt embroiled in his own power struggles. A civil war raged back in Rome. He was pursuing his rival, Pompey the Great, right into Cleopatra's web. Caesar thought he was entering a city ripe for the taking, another jewel for Rome's crown. But honestly, he had no idea the role he was about to play in a much older game. Picture Alexandria in 48 BC, one of the greatest cities in the world. a melting pot of cultures and intrigue. The Great Library stood as a testament to its intellectual prowess. And in the heart of this bustling metropolis, two powers were about to collide: Roman might and Egyptian cunning. Caesar, ever the pragmatist, sought to mediate between Ptolemy XIII and the exiled Cleopatra. He wanted a stable Egypt, a source of grain and gold for his legions. But Cleopatra, well, she had other plans. She saw in Caesar not just a mediator, but an opportunity. A very powerful opportunity. History whispers of a clandestine meeting. Cleopatra, defying her brother's guards, smuggled into Caesar's quarters. Legend claims she was rolled up in a carpet. Whether true or not, one thing is certain. Cleopatra understood the power of a grand entrance. She was playing not just for Caesar's mind, but for history itself. Now, many like to reduce this moment to a simple seduction. A beautiful queen and a powerful general. But that's a disservice to both Cleopatra and to history itself. What transpired between them was far more complex, far more calculated. Cleopatra was fluent in several languages. She was schooled in philosophy, mathematics, and statecraft. She was, by all accounts, a formidable intellect. She knew that to control Caesar's decisions, she first had to control his desires. She offered him not just her beauty but her mind. She presented herself as the rightful ruler of Egypt, the one who could bring stability and prosperity to his doorstep. She appealed to his ambition, his pragmatism, and yes, perhaps, to his ego. Caesar, for his part, was no fool. He was a seasoned general, a shrewd politician, and yet he was captivated. Was it her beauty, her intelligence, or was it the sheer audacity of her play? We can only speculate. But one thing is certain. Cleopatra, the exiled queen, had become the master of the game. Chapter 4. Power Play, Number 2. The Theater of Power. Cleopatra, now firmly back on the throne of Egypt, understood a fundamental truth of power. It's not enough to simply possess it. You have to project it. You have to embody it in a way that inspires awe, fear, or, in the case of Mark Antony, utter captivation. And what better stage to orchestrate this grand performance than the very heart of her kingdom? Remember, Antony wasn't just some Roman general. This was a man who had walked with Caesar, conquered vast territories, a man accustomed to power in its rawest form. To truly capture his attention, Cleopatra knew she couldn't just meet him as an equal. She had to transcend that. She had to become something more, something legendary. Picture this. Antony, having summoned her to Tarsus, no doubt expecting the usual displays of diplomacy. But Cleopatra, she understood the power of spectacle. Her arrival was nothing short of theatrical. A barge, more akin to a floating palace, adorned with gold, silver, and the richest fabrics, sails billowing like the wings of some mythical creature. This wasn't just a meeting, this was a statement. This was Cleopatra, a living goddess, descending upon the mortal realm. She was crafting a narrative, not just for Antony, but for the entire Roman world. And in doing so, she was taking control of the story before it even began. Every detail, meticulously planned. Cleopatra, adorned in the finest silks and jewels, presenting herself as the embodiment of Isis, the Egyptian goddess of fertility and magic. Can you imagine the scene? The Roman soldiers, hardened veterans of countless campaigns, their jaws slack with awe. This wasn't just beauty. This was power personified. And Antony, for all his might, for all his conquests, he was still a man. A man confronted with a vision that transcended the mundane, a vision that spoke of ancient power and undeniable allure. And what of their interactions? History tells us of lavish banquets, each one a carefully orchestrated performance. Cleopatra, fluent in multiple languages, matching Antony, wit for wit, charm for charm. This wasn't just a seduction, it was a meeting of minds, a clash of civilizations, all playing out on the grand stage that Cleopatra had so carefully constructed. She understood that true power doesn't just conquer, it captivates, it seduces, it leaves its audience breathless and wanting more. And in that moment, on that stage of her own creation, Cleopatra was the undisputed master of the performance. Chapter 5. Power play number 3. Align with strength, abandon the weak. The death of Julius Caesar. A world turned upside down. Imagine the chaos, the uncertainty. For Cleopatra, it was a moment of truth. She had staked her claim to power on an alliance with a giant, and that giant had fallen. This is where we see the steel beneath the silk. Many rulers would have faltered, clinging to the ghost of past alliances. Not Cleopatra. She understood a fundamental truth of power. It's fluid, always shifting. To survive, you must flow with it. And flow she did. Mark Antony, Caesar's powerful general, emerged from the Roman power struggle. Cleopatra, ever the pragmatist, saw an opportunity to secure her kingdom and her legacy. The game had changed, the players had changed, but the goal remained the same: power. She would use the same blend of cunning, allure, and political savvy that had captivated Caesar to secure her position with Antony. This was a high-stakes gamble, a dangerous dance with a new partner. But Cleopatra, it seemed, lived for this kind of gamble. The relationship between Cleopatra and Antony has captivated historians for centuries. Was it love? Was it a cold-blooded political arrangement? The answer, like most things in history, is probably a bit of both. What we can say with certainty is that Cleopatra played her hand masterfully. She secured recognition for her children, expanded her territory, and for a time, reigned supreme as the undisputed Queen of Egypt. This was a woman operating at the pinnacle of power, a chess master, anticipating moves years in advance. But power, as we've seen time and again, is a fickle mistress. It can be intoxicating, addictive even. And like any addiction, it can lead to poor decisions, to risks that seem unthinkable in the cold light of day. Cleopatra's alliance with Antony gave her everything she could have wanted. But it also sowed the seeds of her downfall. Because while they were celebrating their victories, a new power was rising in Rome. A power that would not tolerate rivals. A power that would stop at nothing to control the known world. Chapter 6. The Fall. When power becomes a threat. Octavian, Caesar's heir, a young man of cunning ambition and ruthless pragmatism. He looked at the Roman world, still reeling from years of civil war, and saw an opportunity to seize absolute power. Cleopatra and Antony, drunk on their own power, failed to recognize the threat Octavian posed. Or perhaps they underestimated him. A fatal mistake. Octavian understood that to control the present, you must control the narrative of the past. And so, he launched a propaganda war against Cleopatra, painting her as a foreign seductress who had bewitched Antony and threatened the very heart of Rome. This was a masterstroke. Rome, still reeling from decades of civil war, was fertile ground for such rhetoric. Fear, resentment, xenophobia, these were powerful weapons, and Octavian wielded them expertly. The tide of public opinion began to turn against Cleopatra. The queen, who had once been celebrated as a goddess, was now demonized as a threat to Roman virtue and stability. But Cleopatra was no stranger to adversity. She had stared down challenges her entire life. She would fight back, not just with swords and shields, but with the same weapons Octavian had used against her: propaganda, alliances, and the projection of raw power. The final confrontation was inevitable. Octavian's forces, fueled by righteous Roman indignation, clashed with the combined might of Cleopatra and Antony at the Battle of Actium. It was a clash of titans, a battle that would decide the fate of the known world. And it was a battle that Cleopatra and Antony lost. Badly. The defeat shattered their forces, and more importantly, shattered the aura of invincibility they had so carefully cultivated. They were forced to flee back to Egypt, their dreams of a shared empire in ruins. Facing certain defeat, Cleopatra chose a different path, a path that would cement her legacy for millennia to come. She chose legend over submission, choosing to die on her own terms rather than be paraded through the streets of Rome in chains. The story of Cleopatra is a cautionary tale, a reminder that power, no matter how absolute, is fleeting. It's a story of ambition, betrayal, and ultimately, tragedy. But it's also a story of courage, resilience, and the enduring power of myth. Cleopatra may have lost her throne, but in death, she achieved something far greater. She became a legend. Chapter 7. Outro. Cleopatra understood that true power operates on multiple levels. There's the power of armies and navies, of course. But there's also the power of perception, of allure, of myth-making. This was Cleopatra's throne behind the throne, and she wielded it masterfully. Want more stories like this, decoded and weaponized for modern domination? Subscribe to Power Plays Network. We drop daily lessons from history's most brilliant tacticians. Power is everywhere, if you know where to look. Every move you make shapes your future. Learn the game, master the strategy, and rise above the rest. If you found value in today's Power Play, don't just watch, apply it. Hit that like button, subscribe to Power Plays Network, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new law of power in action. Your next move determines your destiny. Choose wisely.